our next talk is going to be with John Lee from PickFu. So he's going to, just while our stage manager sets him up there, oh, maybe popping in. Just like to take this opportunity to remind you, as Joel and I were just talking about. Hi, John. I'll bring you on in a moment there. Just to remind you, as Joel and I were saying there, Discord. We've been running a Discord for this event, and it's a great place to mingle informally with with other attendees, but also our speakers as well. So, following up any of the tracks, if you want to check in and ask any questions of any of the speakers, you can dive over there into Discord. The link is right there on the purple button in Meet to Match. So if you go in there on your dashboard, you'll see the quick link into Discord there. So that should get you started. So this is going to bring us up to our next talk. We're starting a couple of minutes early, but that's great. It gives us plenty of breathing room for questions. John, how are you doing?
Good. Excuse me. Good. How are you doing, Dave?
Yeah, I'm all right. Thank you. Yeah, I'm sad that we're not actually in Helsinki itself. I love visiting the Finnish capital, and it's always great to do a conference in person. But, this opens it up to a whole new global audience, I think. We've had people from here from 70 countries.
Interesting.
Where are you zooming to us from today?
I'm zooming from the San Francisco Bay Area in California.
Amazing. So it's your morning there. Thank you for getting up early to take part.
Yeah. Happy to be here.
We actually hosted a Pocket Gamer Connects in San Francisco a couple of years back. It was a fantastic city and a great place to hold a conference as well. Hopefully we'll be back at some point.
Absolutely. I hope to be able to attend these in person.
So look, you're here today to give us a talk about, it's called From Hero to Zero, but you're going to be talking about rapid user testing, I think. Is that right?
That's right.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. Well, look, if you're ready to roll and you've got your presentation there, I'm going to suggest that we get started. What I'll do is just remind everyone that if you have questions for John, stick them in the Q&A box at the bottom of your Zoom screen. I'll keep my eye on those. John, don't feel you have to curate those live. You just go ahead and give us your PickFu presentation. And at the end, I'll pop back in and we can look at those questions together if there are any. Okay?
Yeah, that sounds great.
So look, I'm going to fade into the background. John, over to you.
Cool. Are you able to see the slides?
Oh, yes. Yeah, very clear.
Okay, great. Cool. Well, thank you everyone for having me here. Today we'll be talking about giving gamers what they want with rapid user testing. So first of all, a little bit about myself. So I'm John. I'm one of the co-founders of PickFu. I've been building software and playing video games my entire life, but I do not build video games. Instead, I prefer to build software and tools that help others build games and their software businesses. So I started my career a while back at Microsoft doing software and product development, actually for mobile devices, long time ago, before leaving to start a company with my co-founder, Justin. And that was many years ago. So enough about me. What are we talking about today? So we're going to be talking about two things. One, as I'm sure everyone already knows, launching a game is hard. And how can you know what users actually want? And number two, what is rapid user testing and how can it help your team's efforts? So first point, how do you know what gamers want? So as developers, today you have a seemingly infinite number of tools at your disposal. Creating a game today is not like creating a game 10 years ago or 5 years ago or even 1 year ago, right? So let's take a look at the landscape. Here's a landscape of tools that are based on two axes. One is the kind of data received from your tests, the qualitative data, as you can see, column on the left, and then the quantitative data, as you can see on the left, which is, your numbers, your metrics, your usage, all of that stuff, and the qualitative data, the why, on the column on the right. That kind of data is gathered by conversations or videos, but basically interaction with users off your game, right? Either written or oral communication. And then the other axis is who you're gathering that data from. So across the top, those are your target users. Those are the users that you want to reach, that are your future users. And then on the bottom row, those are your current users, the ones who are actually playing your games. So now we feel that game development is full of data, but that data is kind of useless if it doesn't give you the understanding of what gamers want. So let's say through a typical soft launch, developers are using internal analytics and App Store metrics to identify problems, right? That's quantitative data from your current users. There's a ton of tools and a ton of ways to gather this. Now, these kinds of problems during a soft launch could be anything from store issues, like the initial download is too large, screenshots that don't accurately communicate gameplay, wording on descriptions that aren't enticing, to like anything like gameplay issues, right? Game art doesn't align with your audience, or like the FTUI is poor, the gameplay isn't sticky enough. These are things that you can at least diagnose that you're going to have an issue with this kind of instrumentation and these kinds of tools. Now, on the right side, if you're fortunate enough to have the resources to build a community, those can be helpful to sort of get that written feedback from users of your game. And that, plus you can comb the App Store reviews for what gamers are saying, but they both still don't help you understand why gamers weren't installing a game. Like, it's hard to get feedback on a product if no one has a product to review. Now, in the top left quadrant, those are the quantitative data from your target users. These are things that you were probably already looking at first, right? When you first conceptualized the game, you probably looked at App Annie and looked at a bunch of other market research reports, perhaps, to see, okay, well, these are the characteristics of the market that we want to go after. This is the idea for the game, and so on, and you want to make that match. So those tools are out there, but that's more at the beginning. That's more looking at the beginning of the development process. So that brings us to the final quadrant, qualitative feedback from your target market. And that's what PickFu does in a fast, affordable, and now accessible way. PickFu helps you get insights from your target users even before you launch. So let's take a look at some examples. I want to go through a quick case study here of a customer who used PickFu to turn around a failed soft launch. So this publisher, who shall remain nameless, they already had a string of hits under their belt, and they were a top 10 publisher. They grossed over $1 billion in App Store revenue before launching this game. So all this happened about a year ago, and they had been working on this new game, which is a character-based RPG. They've been working on this new game for over a year, full development cycle, and they had just soft launched it in Russia. And where it, thanks to the instrumentation, they saw that it massively underperformed in downloads, didn't hit their metrics. So their App Store metrics showed that users weren't biting. What now? Why aren't users downloading the game? So here are 3 questions that any product manager would ask themselves to understand why users aren't downloading a game. Number 1, are we using the right screenshots, and are they in the right order in the App Store? Number 2, is that app icon compelling enough? In the case of a character-based RPG, are we using the right character in that app icon? And then number 3, is our description working? Does it emphasize the most compelling features of our game to drive those downloads? So we're going to dive in. Our publisher client used PickFu to help answer these 3 questions with 3 polls. So we're going to dive in and see how. Here's a screenshot of a sample PickFu poll. Now, due to confidentiality, I cannot share the exact polls that this large publisher customer of ours did. But what I could do is I could run very, very similar polls with existing creatives out there. So this weekend, I went and I took those polls, and instead I took creatives from a game that's near and dear to my heart, Brawl Stars. And I went and recreated those same polls. So those are the polls that we'll be showing here. Here's a sample PickFu poll. You can see it's a quick poll, question across the top, 4 options for people to choose from. You can see the scoring there, results underneath, and then rows of responses to each option underneath. We'll dive in deeper here. So the first test that the publisher ran was testing their screenshots, trying to answer, are we using the screenshots, the right screenshots, and in the right order? So like I said earlier, they took their screenshots from that soft launch, they put them up on PickFu, and they asked, what screenshot would make you most want to download and play a mobile 3v3 battle game? well, sorry, I asked about the 3v3 battle game. They asked about the character-based RPG. In this case, we put up 4 screenshots. They targeted 50 mobile gamers with App Store spend. And this entire poll completed with results in 1 hour and 12 minutes and cost about $200. So if you want to see the full results of this poll that I ran this past weekend, you can scan that QR code and you can see the full results. Let's dive deeper into some of the comments that the panelists actually gave. So these are actual comments from the poll that I ran this past weekend. Option C simply shows more information. It has the side with all the options such as social, news, brawlers. It shows the character looks and promotes the ability to play with friends. So in this case, option C is the screenshot where it actually shows a carousel of characters that are playable in Brawl Stars. This response was by a female aged 35 to 44 with 30 to 60K of income with a graduate degree. Or another comment, option D allows you to actually see the game. Option C, B, and A don't actually show you the game. However, C is better than B because you get to see your 3 battlers and it can give you an idea of being a 3v3. In order their preference for each one of the options. So this last comment was by a male gamer aged 35 to 44, over 100K in income with a graduate degree. So the publisher analyzed these results and the action taken was they replaced the leading screenshot for the game and then reordered the others based on the rankings from the results of this poll. So the next test that they ran was about figuring out whether they were using the right app icon and specifically whether they were featuring the right character here. Trying to answer the question, is it compelling? Does it showcase the right character? So the sample poll that I ran to duplicate was I went and I grabbed 3 app icons, 3 historically different app icons from Brawl Stars, put them up here and ran the poll question, which app icon makes you most want to download and play a mobile 3v3 battle game? You see the 3 options there. The audience was the same as the previous one, 50 mobile gamers with App Store spend. In this case, the poll completed in under an hour, cost under $200. Some interesting comments, like, I like the skull icons better than the smiley face in option B. I think having an eye patch makes it look cooler. I personally do as well. Both of the skulls are good, however, and much better than the generic smiley. That was from a male aged 25 to 34, 30 to 60K in income with a bachelor's degree. And then another comment, the skull in option A is way more interesting and unique compared to the smiley face. And it makes more sense for a fighting game. I like the cute angry face far more compared to the eye patch. That was from a female gamer aged 35 to 44, 100K plus in income with a bachelor's degree. Again, you can see the full results of this poll and read all 50 comments if you scan that QR code. So, you know, as an aside, I think the current Brawl Star icon is actually the smiley face in the middle, which in this poll kind of lost handily. So, who knows? So after reviewing their poll about the app icon, what did our publisher do? They changed the character. They changed the character featured on the app icon based on the results. So finally, we get to descriptions. Similar setup as before, for this past weekend, I grabbed all the feature bullet points from the Brawl Stars listing in the App Store and ran a similar poll to what our publisher did about descriptions. Answering the question, trying to figure out the question, is our description emphasizing the most compelling features? So I put up the 4 text blurbs, asked that poll question, targeted 50 mobile gamers with App Store spend. And in this case, the poll completed in 51 minutes. The total cost was about $200. And a notable comment here, let's say option A rules this one because it makes clear that it's fun, either by yourself or with others. Winner take all is a great line. And this respondent actually got into the details and quoted one of the lines in that option A description. You can see the other one here and see the full results by scanning the QR code. So again, action taken after analyzing the results. Our publisher did change and reorder the descriptions based on the poll ranking results. So these were the three polls that our publisher our publisher customer ran to diagnose those 3 questions. So to review the changes, they updated the screenshot order, they changed the app icon to a different character, and they reordered the feature descriptions in the App Store, in their App Store description. So what happened after this? After this, the publisher did another soft launch in another secondary market where they met their target install metrics. They saw that the downloads definitely increased, hit their levels, and that gave them the confidence to launch broadly into the US. And that's what they did earlier this year. So I'm happy to say that the game itself is doing well. I think it has a 4.3 star rating, it's going up, and the publisher is continuing to iterate on all their creatives and other listings in the App Store and using PickFu. So let's take a step back and see what's going on behind the scenes. PickFu gives you real user feedback in hours and not days. So we think of PickFu as a type of rapid user testing. And what is rapid user testing? Well, traditionally, the only way you would, one of the few ways you would be able to get this qualitative feedback from your target audience is to run some kind of focus group. But traditional focus groups have generally been costly and time consuming. And we think of PickFu more as a quick digital focus group. So by rapid, we mean that our surveys and our polls are simple single question polls that are completed in minutes and hours and not days or weeks, and that start at $1 per response. And when we say the user in rapid user testing are not users who play or play test your game, but they're our panel of over 10,000 US consumers that are all under NDA, so they don't reveal anything that they provide feedback on. They're all paid a small stipend per poll, and we have demographic and psychographic and a lot of information about them. So you can you can actually reach your target market, and you can target by gaming specific demographics. More on that later. And they're all quality controlled by human feedback and machine learning algorithms. Now, a little bit more about the testing. You get a written explanation from every single respondent on your polls, which you saw earlier in the examples. You can test between 1 to 8 options. If you have 2 or more options, the respondents will vote on those options. And you can test images, text, video, and audio. All the polling is private, and the results are private. Only the people you share it with are able to see it. And so we think that this approach to gathering qualitative feedback is fast and it's easy. And in this manner, we're able to provide both quantitative and qualitative insight on your creatives. So again, in every poll, all polls include written responses. You can see a screenshot of all the different responses, and these are real people. They're not AI. People have asked. If you dive in and read the comments, you can recognize that they are definitely humans. Additionally, all polls include demographic reporting of that entire panel of 50 to 500 people who have responded to your poll. So you can see the breakdown within your panel, your mini panel, of age, gender, income, mobile device usage, you can slice and dice any way you'd like. And in terms of targeting, we have the standard targeting demographic traits, gender, age, ethnicity, but we're also able to micro-target on behavioral traits. So for example, what kind of mobile device they use, or whether or not they actually play mobile games, and even how much they've spent in the App Store, along with favorite game genres and a whole bunch of other less gaming related, but potentially related to your game traits. So where does PickFu actually help in the game development process? We went through a case study about turning around a failed soft launch. We have a number of publishers using PickFu now, and actually they use PickFu in every stage of game creation. So in the pre-production stage, developers are using PickFu to test game, name, and character concepts. You can do competitive analysis with PickFu. I'll show you an example in a bit. Character development is a huge one, as is various kinds of art design. During production, we see publishers testing gameplay variations and UI variations. And at launch time and beyond, PickFu is obviously used to test app icons and so on for App Store optimization. And even testing digital advertising or TV advertising before paying those big bucks to launch it out to your broader market. So I'm going to go through a couple of different examples here. So you can use PickFu to test your game's name. You might want to put this out there to avoid various, mistakes or poor names that might not reflect so well on your game or on your company, and ensure that your game's name is a draw and not a turnoff. So this is an actual poll. The options are blurred out here, but there's an actual poll from a game developer asking what name would make you want to download the game, testing 3 different options. In this case, it's a splash image with the name version across the front. The audience was 500 respondents to a general population. This poll, because it's 500 people, took about 13 hours, cost about $600. You can also test art themes with PickFu. So I've heard developers say that testing is stifling to creative teams. But what we found is that with PickFu, your creative teams are actually more free to explore different concepts and themes, knowing that you're going to be able to then validate them quickly with your target market and actually see what resonates. So in this example, it was 4 different art styles of a city-themed puzzle game, targeting 50 female mobile gamers age 18 to 34, took 2 hours to complete, cost a little under $300. You can actually do gameplay testing because you can upload videos to PickFu. So in this example, we had a publisher testing a gameplay mechanic before committing to actually producing them. So this was testing a battle formation animation. So the question, which battle formation do you like? 3 options, 3 different videos, targeting 50 male mobile gamers aged 18 to 34. And this whole poll took 2 hours, cost about $230. And as you can see by the screenshot here, option C was an overwhelming winner. And I would suspect that because they wanted to put this poll on PickFu, the publisher was not actually that confident about which gameplay mechanic was going to be the best one or which formation was going to be the best one. So this was really good validation for them. And finally, we come to my favorite type of PickFu poll, which is the competitive analysis. So with PickFu, your competition doesn't need to know that you're comparing, right? But because you're able to take your creatives, others' creatives, and test them off market, and with our panel, with a private panel, you can understand how your game will be received even before launching, during the conceptual phase, or at any earlier phase. So in this specific example, the publisher was asking, which idle RPG game would you rather play and why? They tested 2 images from 2 different games. I'm assuming one was theirs. We don't know, but I'm assuming one was theirs and one was a competitor's, targeting 50 mobile gamers, and this poll completed in 28 minutes and cost $100. Now, the reason that you're able to see the screenshot here is that you have an option of making polls public. In this case, our customer did make this poll public, so we are able to show the screenshots, but generally polls are private by default. So those are some of the examples of using PickFu. There's a lot of other examples to show, but you can find me offline or later for that. So wrapping up, in summary, 3 things. Number 1, PickFu provides affordable and actionable feedback in hours and not days. And number 2, qualitative market feedback. It's a valuable tool in your tool belt, and it's underutilized, and it can really help you stack the deck in your game's favor. And then finally, understanding your users is critical before you launch. So if there's one main takeaway, that's it. And with that, I'm all done. So thank you so much for your time. You can learn more by scanning the QR code or checking out that URL. And if you are creating a game and you want to try PickFu, you can find me or my co-founder Justin on Discord, and we'll run a poll on your game. So thank you very much.
Thank you, John. Absolutely
Yes.
Great. Perfect. And I think we might have a few questions, but I just want to say that was really interesting. I was watching that kind of going, "Oh, this is super useful." And I've got a few questions I was going to ask you myself as well, if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
We've got a couple of minutes, so I can see we've had kind of 5 questions there. We'll come to those in a sec. I'm grateful that you put up the Q&R code again at the end there, because I was going to ask you if you could have that again for folk to scan. So we'll leave
Yep.
that on the screen while we talk. I appreciate that. Again, I was going to ask, when I saw your earlier slides in there, how it was that you had so much information on your panel, like their educational level and that kind of thing. And then you said that, of course, they're all part of your the community that you've created, so that they're all signed up under NDA. How do you go about getting those testers in, those users? Do people apply to be part of the program? What's your process for selecting the people who take part in the polls?
Absolutely. So we work with a number of third-party panels on the back end and we connect with a bunch of different panels, and then we have our own screening questions and surveys and so on to allow people to come in through those third-party panels to join our panel. And so when polls are published, then we choose the appropriate panel, we put it out there, and generally the panelists really enjoy doing these polls.
Oh, that makes sense. That's good. And also, just from the game developers' perspective, once they've signed up to PickFu,
yep.
What's their experience? So is it all sort of self-serve? Once they've become they've subscribed to the service or whatever, they have a game to test. Is it all kind of managed through a web front end, and a person and a developer can log in? What's the experience like of getting something tested? Is it relatively straightforward?
Yeah, so PickFu is completely self-service. We've made the process simple enough where you can start a poll in 1 minute. What we like to say is that you can start a poll in 1 minute, you're going to get results in the next minute, and then generally your poll will be done within 30 minutes, depending on your targeting. So yeah, we do provide some, we can help you with your poll, but generally the vast majority of our customers just come on the site, build the polls themselves, launch them, and receive the results.
Yeah, great. It feels like a relatively straightforward and affordable way to get just to quiz a bunch of gamers about very specific things like your graphics, your icon. That's the word I'm looking for.
Absolutely, yeah.
And other facets as well. That's great. So I'm gonna dive in here. We've got 5 questions, and we're okay for time. So I'm gonna put these to you, if that's all right, John. Sure. Looks like many of these are anonymous, but so one of our viewers asks, could you please comment a bit on the difference of answers you see from certain user profiles? Is it possible to foresee the preferences based on the profiles? I guess this is about you guys spotting a pattern, perhaps, in the type of responses you get. But can you speak to that at all?
I can't speak towards about patenting, although that is interesting. But I would say that there are absolutely you can absolutely see differences between different types of audiences. Right. We see publishers come on where they will run multiple polls targeting different audience segments because they want to see the difference in responses between, let's say, the general population, and then male mobile gamers or female mobile gamers. You can do that within the scope of one poll because we do allow filtering within your set of answers by demographics, by income, and so on. But you can get more responses by running separate polls. So we definitely see customers running multiple polls to different audience segments, and sometimes they're even using that to try to figure out, does it make sense to actually target segment A versus segment B in terms of their marketing, right? Like if they see that male mobile gamers of a certain age range are actually responding better to their creatives, maybe they're going to tweak how they're setting up their marketing messaging so that they can target that segment instead.
Gotcha. And in fact, on that note, the next question says, do you find that users focus more on the visuals or on the text? And the subtext there from this questioner is that they have a feeling that most people don't read anything.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a completely fair question. And so that's why the quality control side of our panel is actually matters a lot to us. All the panelists do look at the options, compare them, and read. And if they do not, then any customer can flag or call to note any responses that are dissatisfying or didn't follow instructions. And then we have algorithms on our back end to scan all the responses and so on, and human raters as well, to make sure that the respondents and the answers are on point. And we will, I will just say that we will exclude with extreme prejudice panelists who who are not providing value.
Right, that's great. So you're kind of making sure to curate that audience as well and
Absolutely.
make sure that they're going to give the most value. Now, this is a really good question. It's something that occurred to me, actually, and I didn't ask it because it was dropped into the chat here. But the question is, when do you believe is the best time to use this kind of rapid user testing? Should it be during the design already to avoid lots of time and work? I was watching your presentation thinking, oh, should a person be doing this the moment they have a concept for the game, or should they be doing this just before release? So I guess that's the question that's been preempted by someone in the audience there. But what's your take?
Absolutely, that's a great question. So what we found is that the earlier you use it in your process, the more success a rapid user test like PickFu can contribute to your product or your game, because basically, rapid user testing like PickFu is course correction. So if you think of, you're creating a game and you're starting on a journey, it's better to make sure you're heading in the right direction earlier rather than later in your path. Now, if you can wait until you get to launch and you get to soft launch and realize that things haven't gone well and then try to course correct, and PickFu can be helpful for that. But wouldn't it be better to know earlier in the process, like, hey, I have a concept for a game targeting, like iOS, like females who play iOS puzzlers. Wouldn't you like to know that, yeah, this is a concept that actually resonates well with that target audience before you start committing to art, to character sketches, to design, to programming, all of that stuff, right?
Yeah.
So we generally try to advise the earlier the better in terms of this kind of testing.
Oh, that makes perfect sense, because I can see one of your examples was about trying to work out perhaps what wasn't going as well as expected with the soft launch, and I can totally see that kind of course correction if something's not right as a kind of troubleshooting measure you can get feedback.
Absolutely.
But I totally see that this is at the start of a project, a few $100s well spent just to make sure you're on the right direction before you even kind of start build, because otherwise you've got to build. You might have to rebuild a whole ton of assets, right? If it turns out that you're just going, So no, that makes a load of sense. I'm gonna here we go. Let's dive into the next one there. I think you might have already answered this through the course of your presentation, but I'll put it to you anyway because an attendee asked it. How do you get these responses? Are the respondents paid? And I think you said that they were, but do you want to tell us a little bit more about that, please?
Yeah. So again, we get the respondents by working with other third-party panels, and they are paid. So they're paid a stipend for every single response that they give. That's
great, and it means that they're incentivized to take part and take it seriously.
Absolutely, exactly. That's what incentivizes the speed and how rapidly we can get those responses.
Great. So this is a final question. This is kind of, I guess, maybe a little bit philosophical here. But one of our anonymous attendees asks: is there a risk that creativity might be overlooked to service user feedback? I guess that's a question, perhaps, about the kind of a developer's vision, maybe versus the focus group. What do you make of that?
So I think that PickFu is a really good tool to get data points about your direction. But I think it actually still, I alluded to this in a slide earlier regarding art concepts, actually, is that you can actually, knowing that you have this safeguard and this tool for validation, you can actually get more crazy with your art styles. You can get more crazy with your wild concepts because you can sketch them out and you can test them out. And maybe one of them will actually strike with your target audience that you would not have known about before testing. Or you might have thought before testing, you might be self-censoring and saying, hey, we're targeting this segment, but no, this idea is never going to work, or this art style is never going to work. But now you can actually sketch it out and put it up there. And within like a couple of minutes or hours, you can know at least, hey, you have this validation, like, yeah, that did work, or, like maybe it didn't work and here are the responses why. And now at least I understand why something's working or not.
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, that's a really good point, because I was thinking that, of course, this is a business after all, and
absolutely.
And a person's vision is one thing, but actually, if you're making a game to sell, obviously you need to appeal to your customers, and that's great. But you're absolutely right. In fact, actually, as a way to kind of get creative and then test those creativity and actually put a little bit of faith in the audience and see what they respond to. What a great way to just, see to try out some stuff.
Yeah, exactly. We see a lot of, and we're seeing more and more sort of art concept tests on PickFu from our publisher gamers, that once they start realizing like, actually, we can test more things here,
Yeah, that's great. Well, look, John, we're at the end of our time, and it's we're just teeing up our next speaker. So I will just take the opportunity to thank you very much for coming along and giving us that great presentation. Round of applause from the audience. You'll have to imagine that coming from for a number of people. Hopefully, sometime soon, maybe next year, we'll be able to come and see you in person in San Francisco there, or you'll join us over in London or something like that next year.
Would love to.
Yeah, and in the meantime, folks, if you've been watching this presentation and you'd like to find out a little bit more about PickFu, John, you're in Meet to Match, I guess, or in the Discord perhaps, and you put your details are on the screen there so folk can email you.
Yeah, exactly. So John and PickFu, I'll be in Discord all week and in Meet to Match.
Great stuff. Well, look, thank you very much for joining us, and yeah, well, appreciate it, and everyone look out for John and PickFu. Thank you.
Thank you very much.